In 1932, as dole queues lengthened across America, 13 million were out of work. Nearly a third of the people relied on handouts from private charities. There was no welfare state to help them. It was the time of the Great Depression. Evictions became a common sight as people could no longer afford to keep up their payments for their furniture and their homes. The Republican president, Herbert Hoover, really believed in self-help, not government help. He thought a welfare state encouraged idleness. His efforts to halt unemployment had been too little and too late. Now the very poor had to live in shanty towns, which they bitterly called Hoovervilles. In a newspaper interview at the time, Hoover told a reporter, "Nobody is actually starving." The mood in town and country was one of hopelessness and despair. It seemed that things would never get better. The man destined to change all that was born in this house called Hyde Park in New York State. He was a member of a rich Dutch-American family. His name was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. At his expensive boarding school, he was good at sports and popular. His charm captivated a distant cousin, Eleanor Roosevelt. In 1904, they were guests at a cousin's wedding. A year later, they were themselves married. Both were rich. After leaving university, Roosevelt became a lawyer and a devoted family man. He entered politics as a Democratic Party senator and later the youngest ever assistant secretary to the Navy. Then, in 1921, tragedy struck. Roosevelt got polio. He would never walk again without support. His political career seemed at an end. It was his wife, Eleanor, in the coming years a vital inspiration, who encouraged him back into politics. She, too, had to make a lot of public appearances, and this basically shy woman was to become extremely popular. Encouraged by his wife, close friends, and his own ambitions, Roosevelt became Democratic governor of New York in 1928. Success there led him in 1932 to become the Democratic Party's presidential candidate, pledged to fight the Depression.
Let us all here assembled constitute ourselves prophets of a new order of competence and of courage. This is more than a political campaign. It is a call to arms. Give me your help, not to win votes alone, but to win in this crusade to restore America to its own people.
Although disabled, Roosevelt conducted a vigorous campaign against President Hoover. His message was clear. He'd offer the Americans a new deal and get the unemployed back to work. He didn't spell out plans to end the Depression, nor did the voters greatly care for details. What they wanted and got was hope and confidence. The result was never in doubt.
It looks, my friends, like a real landslide this time. So please let me thank you again and tell you that I hope to see you all very soon and bid you an affectionate good night.
He'd won 42 out of the 48 states. The new president's first speech to the nation was a rallying call for joint action by the government and the people.
First of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror. I shall ask the Congress for the one remaining instrument to meet the crisis. Broad executive power to wage a war against the emergency as great as the power that would be given to me if we were in fact invaded by a foreign foe.
That same night in the White House, Roosevelt got down to work to deal with the emergency. He relied heavily on a small group of advisors to draft the necessary laws. Their first job was to restore the shattered economy. Since the Wall Street crash, over 5,000 banks had closed down. People withdrew their money from the banks and kept it at home. There was no confidence in the system. To stop the panic, Roosevelt closed all the banks for 4 days. In the famous first 100 days, he persuaded Congress to pass 15 new laws to fight the emergency. Now something was happening, and confidence began to return. He believed in explaining these New Deal laws directly to the people to gain their confidence. He did this in his regular radio fireside chats.
And courage. Let us unite in banishing fear. We have provided the machinery to restore our financial system, and it is up to you to support and make it work. It is your problem, my friends, no less than it is mine. Together, we cannot fail.
One of his first acts allowed beer to be sold again. It signaled the end of prohibition and of gangster control over drink. The new laws to help all sections of the community were nicknamed the Alphabet Laws. Farmers were given help under the AAA, or Agricultural Adjustment Act. They were suffering because of rapidly falling prices for their products. To raise these prices, the AAA paid out money to farmers who produced less. But this meant crops ploughed up and livestock killed. For some critics, this was a great waste. It might help the farmers, but what about those Americans who were going hungry? Roosevelt's answer was to get the unemployed to earn money on new government building schemes. For instance, the WPA, or Works Progress Administration, gave work to about 8 million people on a number of projects over the years.
Everybody's working in this town, and it's worrying me night and day. Everybody's working in this town, worrying me night and day. That's the mean, hard-working crew says they work for the WPA.
To get young men out of the soul-destroying dole queues in the city, the CCC, or Civilian Conservation Corps, was formed. They cleared thousands of acres and planted millions of trees to prevent soil being washed away. In some parts of America, heavy rains brought floods which washed away the soil and destroyed the local farmers' livelihood. The Tennessee Valley was a particularly bad example, and one of the most important alphabet laws created the TVA, or Tennessee Valley Authority. This vast government project built a series of dams which controlled the flooding and also provided cheap electricity in the valley for the first time. This angered private firms who were kept out of the scheme.